speaking of worse than last year, we can move on to the final team in this division. The Cleveland Browns just make me mad, man. I was so ready to. I power rank this team. I do my rankings every year. I had them number one on my rankings last year. I thought they were going to take a huge leap after their playoff return against the Steelers. They had that huge win. They
Yeah.
fought with the Chiefs.
hmm
And I just thought the combination of the elite O line, the great defense, the good running backs, and I thought he could be a Jimmy Garoppolo type where if he had that protection, he would be able to have time to throw and play well. Obviously, he dealt with the injury, and we can get into how they've handled everything since then. But looking at this team now, I'm just not happy with what they've done.
No, I agree. I think that they've just made a lot of confusing decisions with signings, trades, personnel decisions. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot going on with this team that I have no faith in. And
Yeah.
it's a shame. Like you said, like you really thought after their playoff win, like, wow, the Browns are finally like, we're not gonna laugh at them anymore. We're gonna be like, wow, the Browns, like this is a good team. And look where we are. We've got their starting quarterback suspended. Their receiving core has been decimated.
Yeah.
Um, their star backup running back wants to be traded.
Mhm.
This defense is questionable at best because there's a few star players on here,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of players that they're counting on to like really step up. And I don't think that's fair to do that to those players. Just a lot that I don't like about the team. I don't like their draft either. I think their draft was not amazing. Like, I don't know. There's just a lot going on here.
Yeah, obviously, let's just get the Watson stuff out of the way because I don't even want to talk about that loser. But here's the thing: it's one thing to take the gamble. I'm not going to say the Browns were not the only team trying to get Deshaun Watson. I
For sure.
understand that,
Yeah.
but to completely guarantee his contract when you
Sure.
know all these things going around, and now
hmm
he's at least suspended 6 games. He might wind up getting suspended the whole year. It's just insane. And to combine that with how they handled the Baker situation, where this is a guy who, say what you want about him, I don't think obviously I think you'd agree he's not going to turn out to be worth that number one overall selection. But this is still the guy that got you back to the playoffs, put together a few good seasons for you, played through not a major injury, but a pretty significant injury last year, the whole season. You still won. I believe they won 8 games.
hmm
I, I just don't like how they handled everything involving that quarterback position. I just thought it was really just a really crappy way to handle business. I know, like you said before, the NFL is a business, but you can still be a little respectful about how you handle it.
No, I totally agree. I think that just like top to bottom, just mm-mm.
Yeah,
It's-
they're
I don't
just
know.
they're doing Browns things again.
It's a shame because last year they really turned it around for one season and look where we are again. We're back at the Browns suck. It's so ironic, or not ironic, but like it's so funny that like it's such a Browns thing to make the playoffs, to be on an upwards trend and then shove it back downwards
Right,
again.
right.
Like I don't know. I think it's absurd. I mean, honestly, all I can what I have to say about the Deshaun Watson situation is terrible person, terrible decision by the GM, and you know what? That's on them, but that's whatever. But I mean, also he didn't play. Besides, like him ethically and morally as a person being a terrible human being, he also didn't play amazing in the playoff or the preseason game,
Yeah.
and that's not good
Well,
news either. Like you bank your whole future on this guy, guarantee his contract, trade away a bunch of huge early picks for what? A guy who hasn't played in like almost 2 years? It's
yeah.
insane.
I mean, 19 months. That's what they were saying yesterday. The guy hasn't played since the 2020 season with the Texans, where they were 4-12. And Watson was good that year. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not going to deny his talent. I was very
No, for
high on
sure.
Watson. I'll say it. He was one of my favorite picks to be the next big superstar in the league just two
Yeah.
2 years ago. But
Yeah.
you know, I understood his frustration with Houston because they weren't doing good. They weren't handling their team well either at all. But then it just, we find out what kind of guy he is. It just collapses around him. And now we're looking at this Cleveland team. The funny thing is, we're talking about the suspension, but really, it's only going to be this season at most. And next year he'll be back. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess you just have to take it for what it is. We can only talk about how messed up it is so much. I want to cover the rest of the team. So for that, I
Yeah.
think we've made our feelings clear on Watson. So
Yeah. The
it's also
problem,
hard. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, like, even if like the thing is like the 6 games, or as it stands, 6 games, he's suspended. Like this quarterback situation is not promising,
I know. Now,
regardless. Like,
I'm a big Jacoby fan, but I mean, I used to be. I don't know if I can be anymore because I really liked what he did with the Colts in
yeah.
2019.
Hmm.
But I mean, you saw him on your team last year. He was terrible for Miami last year.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like the scheme. Like I agree, I was a really big fan of him on the Colts too. I was like, I thought he was kind of dealt an unfair hand. They were trying to replace him. Like he
Yeah.
played good for you guys. And then he gets to the Dolphins, and it's like, I mean, the Dolphins admittedly were not the best team. We didn't have the weapons we needed, but like Brissett also did not play amazingly. Like he
Right.
threw some mallards, but we'll see. I hope he can bounce back because I do really like Jacoby Brissett. Like I
Yeah.
totally agree. I really do like the guy. I have no issue with him. I really liked him on the Colts. So, but it's not promising that looking like using his last film available. It's
Yeah.
not a
Right.
promising look.
And he didn't, I don't believe he took any preseason snaps last night, did he?
Don't
Because
think.
I saw Josh Dobbs was playing, but I don't remember seeing Brissett. So we didn't get to see him there either. It's going to be interesting because if Watson winds up being suspended the whole year, you know, the prediction is a lot different. Because like I'll just say if Watson doesn't play at all, like this is going to be, I would say they're going to win very few games. But since right now, as it stands, he's coming back for the second half of the year, so I still think this team could be, maybe a little competitive. But looking at the offense, you mentioned the receivers. Like, talk about the receiving group. Obviously, Amari Cooper, I think it was a great trade to get him for only a fifth round pick.
Mhm.
But the rest of the receivers aren't exactly, great.
Nothing inspiring. I like Donovan Peoples-Jones, but like I still think he needs time to develop. Like he was like, like the third receiver on the offense last year, and now he's supposed to be like one of the main guys. I don't know. I think they're expecting a lot of also out of David Bell and
Mhm.
like Anthony Schwartz, like these young guys. Like, I don't know. And Amari Cooper, I mean, he's good. If something happens to Amari Cooper, like this receiving course
Yeah.
kind of screwed. Like,
And yeah, and there's some people that are gonna be listening there like Joe, you love Donovan People Jones too, because I had him in our dynasty league. It was kind of a running meme that I was in love with Donovan Peoples Jones. But the thing is, that was when I thought, that the Browns were going places. Like as the number two receiver on the team, where he's really just a deep threat, I think, and he's already had injuries. Like if we're being real, he's not exactly going to light the world on fire. I don't think David Bell's already been on the pup list, and I think he's a good prospect long term for them. But I don't know if he's going to jump off the page as a rookie.
for
So
sure.
like you said, if Cooper gets any injuries, I mean this could get grim, even more grim than it already is. And they
Yeah.
also gave David Njoku, the tight end, a big extension. And in my opinion, David Njoku hasn't really lit the world on fire either. I think he's solid, but they let Austin Hooper walk, and it looks like they're gonna let Njoku have the reins as the number one tight end. But I think they gave him close to 50 million a year, or not a year, but 50 million over 4 years. I don't know. I wouldn't have done that contract either.
Um, I do see where you're coming from with the contract, but I think the real reason why Njoku like hasn't really lit the world on fire is because he hasn't. I feel like he hasn't really had the chance to. Early in his career, he was young, and tight end is notoriously a position that's difficult for players to come into, like, and be successful right away.
Yeah.
And then like 2 years into his career, you just bring in Austin Hooper,
Yeah.
and you're like, hey, you're now the backup and we're not
Right.
giving you this opportunity.
That's true.
I think Njoku, I mean, overpaying players is kind of the norm now. So you could even say like it's not overpaying because like you'd probably have to overpay even more for like someone else. Honestly, you could say that about a lot of players nowadays. Like to make, I mean, this is like a little bit for later, but to make Denzel Ward the highest paid cornerback of all time,
Yeah.
that's kind of insane. Not because Denzel Ward is not good, but like, he's had his injury concerns. Like he's definitely going to miss a handful of games each year. That's kind of the trend with him.
Yeah.
So I think David Njoku just needs his chance. And if anything, they still have Harrison Bryant out of FAU. That's my guy.
I
Um,
like Harrison Bryant a lot.
yeah, I think he's
Because
like if the things don't
he's
work
the
out with him,
stereotypical tight end, but in the best way, I
oh,
think.
for sure. No, I like Harrison Bryant also because like me personally, like, me, I'm from Florida, so like I'm a big fan of like all these like Florida kids and stuff like that. And like Harrison Bryant's from FAU. FAU is a small school, but I do love to see when like FAU products are like successful and like stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I think he's a good tight end. So like if anything, you should have Harrison Bryant. So
Yeah. And you make a good point that Njoku, I guess he's never really had the reins to be the full-time number one. He did have like a 100-yard game last year when he was the number one when Austin Hooper was out, I believe. So that was pretty – that kind of showed his potential. So maybe Cleveland just believes in him. They've seen what the work he's put in. That's a good point. I guess it's just – I don't know. I don't know if I would have done it, but at the same time, I guess it's not the worst thing in the world.
No, for sure. I totally get where you're coming from, but I think like any young player, he still deserves his chance, and
Yeah.
hopefully he can prove people wrong. I hope he can show people why he was given that contract. And I mean, I like Njoku. I hope he plays well.
Yeah, we'll have to see. And wrapping up the offense, like the skill guys. I mean, the running back group. You alluded to the Kareem Hunt trade request earlier, and I think that comes down to that they just don't want to pay him, a ton of money again because at the end of the day they have a ton of depth at running back now, and I actually think it would be in their benefit to trade Kareem Hunt because
Yeah,
I think it would be beneficial for both sides because I think it's time for Kareem Hunt to be a number one running back again. And when I look at the Browns, I think they got a ton of depth at the position.
hmm
What do you
I
say to that?
agree. No, I totally agree. I think like honestly, the right decision is probably. I mean, I would say their offense is their strongest point right now. If anything, you should bolster the kind of weak positions. Like I say, trade Kareem Hunt for a wide receiver. And I think that's where you go from there because you still have Dearness Johnson and like Nick Chubb's still going to be the main starter. Like he's your bell cow.
Yeah,
So you don't like really need like two really good backups. You can be fine with just Dearness Johnson. And like, Cleveland Browns, like we've seen, they've been good at developing running
right.
backs. So like with Dearness Johnson being that example. So I'm not too worried about them like not being able to replace the Dearness Johnson role. So I think the smart decision would be to trade Kareem Hunt for a wide receiver, get someone like experienced in there to help these young guys like improve and stuff like that. And you can see what you're working with from there.
I wish the NFL did more player for player trades because I think it would be interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, he's probably gonna go for like a fourth round pick or something. Like how this how this usually works. I wish they could get a receiver. And you
No,
mentioned Dearness Johnson. I think he definitely proved last year he's pretty good and deserved more playing time. So I think you trade Hunt. I also like Demetric Felton. I think Demetric Felton could take the pass catching duties that Kareem Hunt kind of has, and then you could also give Dearness Johnson more power looks to fill in for Nick Chubb when he needs some air. But yeah, Nick Chubb still being there. You don't necessarily need Kareem Hunt if you can get some assets for him, and he can go be a starter elsewhere.
no, for sure. I totally agree, especially because like they don't need Kareem Hunt, but they do need to help at other positions. So I think
Yeah,
like definitely like it's in their best interest to just kind of be like, yeah, it's okay.
and they
This,
also need picks after they dealt a ton for Mr. Watson, as we mentioned.
yeah, oh yeah,
So anything would help. And the run game's definitely strong, and that's powered by the O line, which is one of the best in the league. I still think. What do you think about the O line? Do you think they're going to continue to be as good as they've been?
yeah. I would say their O line's pretty solid. I mean, that's like the one position besides running back that I think is like super like, oh, this is good.
Yeah,
I think like obviously Jedrick Wills has had some of his like injury issues, but he's been pretty solid. Like this is a good offensive line. So I
yeah,
don't think there's too much to worry about. Although the problem is that Nick Harris did get injured
yeah.
last night in the game, and hopefully he's okay. But it's definitely a loss if they lose their starting center like that.
Well,
So
I was thinking like JC Tretter's still out there as a free agent. Why don't they just bring him back if this is a serious injury? I mean, just bring back the O line that was so good in 2020. Might as well just run it back if Nick Harris is significantly injured. I didn't get to see if we heard anything about what happened to him.
I mean, as it stands, like all we know is that like he was carted off. So
Yeah, I just looked it up. Yeah, no breaking news, just that he was carted off. So we'll have to see. I mean, but I
oh
think there's
wait,
an easy
no.
fix there.
ESPN like 10 minutes ago dropped one that says knee injury likely ends season.
Oh, that's brutal. So yeah,
Yeah.
that stinks for Nick Harris, and hopefully he can have a good recovery. They do have Ethan Pocic as the backup center, former Seahawk. But I mean, like I said, JC Tretter's still a free agent. Go ahead and sign him, bring him back. Like he wasn't even bad last year. He's a good player. It's funny, he's the president of the Players Association. He's just a free agent.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So, but I like Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller, one of the better guard tandems in the league. And you mentioned Jedrick Wills, Jack Conklin. I think besides the center position now, I think they're set in stone that this O-line is going to continue to be pretty good.
For sure. I totally agree.
So moving on to the defense, I'm interested to see why you have concerns about the defense because I still think, I don't think it's amazing, but I think it's pretty solid still. Obviously Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward leading the way.
I think it's okay, but my problem is like I think the D line's kind of shaky outside of Garrett and like Clowney. I think the linebackers are counting like Sione Takitaki is really good, but you're counting on Anthony Walker and Jeremiah Owusu Karamoa to like pop off and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like Anthony Walker's like okay, like he's good, but he's nothing
Yeah,
special.
he has a lot of tackles, but that's really it. Yeah.
Jeremiah, like he's he's young, but he's kind of like a smaller linebacker. I think that the D line, especially, I think is very shaky.
Well,
Me
yeah.
personally, I'm of the opinion that I don't think Jadeveon Clowney is like that amazing.
Oh, I completely agree. Jadeveon Clowney, he did have a bit of a bounce back last year with his 9 sacks after, a pretty injury-filled 10 years with the Titans and Seahawks before that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he benefited a lot from having Myles Garrett with him.
For sure. I mean, the D tackles, like you have Taven Bryant.
Yeah.
Like that's not good. You
I
can't.
was shocked to see that he's their top defensive tackle. I mean, that's a guy who was a first-round pick, didn't really live up to the hype in Jacksonville, hasn't really proven much. I'm not saying like I haven't watched any Taven Bryan tape, I'll be honest. Like I'm not like doing my homework on him, but I just know that as a first round draft pick, he has not exactly been a top tier caliber defensive tackle. So it'll be interesting to see what they see in him. And they also have a guy named Jordan Elliott who's been on the team but hasn't played a lot. And those guys are kind of their top 2 D tackles right now. Far cry from when they had Larry Ogunjobi in there a few years back.
Yeah, no, I still thought it was kind of. I didn't understand why they got rid of Larry Ogunjobi.
Yeah.
Like this a D line, like it's not great outside of Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney to an extent.
And like you can make the argument Jadeveon Clowney will be just as good because he still has Myles Garrett to help him out. Like Myles
Yeah,
Garrett,
of course.
I think Myles Garrett might be the best D end in the league. He's awesome, but Jadeveon Clowney's also had a very long history of injuries, and if he goes out, then Myles Garrett's pretty much gonna have to do this all by himself. And I don't love that for him.
I mean, the only like really strong point I would say is their their secondary. I think Denzel Ward, like he's pretty good, but the issue is that Denzel Ward, he's always good to miss a handful of games. And Grant Delpit, John Johnson, that's a pretty formidable safety duo, all things considered. Ronnie Harrison's no slouch either, I'd say. I'd say Greg Newsome and like Greedy Williams are good secondary corners as well. But I don't like they drafted Martin Emerson as their first pick in the draft. I don't really
What
see
round
why.
was that?
It was the 3rd round because their first pick was a second rounder, and they like moved back. They traded down to the 3rd round to draft a cornerback with their first
Yeah,
the draft, and like there are other needs, and it feels kind of weird to do
definitely.
that.
Yeah, I agree because I mean Denzel Ward, yes, he has had injuries at times, but I mean he's definitely one of the better corners in the league, maybe even a top 5 corner.
For sure.
Definitely a lockdown guy.
Yeah.
And then Greg Newsome was pretty solid as a rookie. I think he'll definitely get better this year. Greedy Williams, he's not terrible either. So I'm really, it is confusing that they did spend their first pick on a corner when, like as we've mentioned, there's plenty of other issues with the team. So you mentioned Grant Delpit. I mean, he obviously had the major injury his first year, missed the whole season. Last year he was okay. I guess they're hoping he's a full-time starter this year. I don't know. Like, I want him to succeed because he has a ton of talent, but even him, I don't think you can't really write him down in pen as an impact guy either.
No, for sure. I totally agree. It's like a really weird scenario with like the Browns. Like they got a lot of like good players, like Denzel Ward, Newsome, John Johnson,
Yeah.
like Myles Garrett. But where's the rest of the team?
Yeah.
You can't have star players and then a bunch of like 3rd string guys.
And it's weird because I really like their depth and their entire team like 2 years ago and coming into last year. So it's very strange how it changed so fast. Like even Watson stuff aside, like the rest of the team has definitely taken a step back as well.
Yeah, it's just very confusing with like what they're really doing here.
Yeah, and they also signed Bojo, Corey Bojorquez, who's the Packers punter last year. He's not that bad, but he also can't. He's very bad at holds. Like he was part of the reason our special teams was such a disaster last year. So we'll see how that goes. You're pairing him with a rookie kicker. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that could go bad. I mean, maybe it's just the Packers special teams voodoo effect. So, but at the
I
same
mean,
time,
I don't. I wouldn't worry about it too much, but I also
no,
totally
I just wanted to point it out because I saw Corey Blorquez and a rookie kicker together, and I was like, that could be a problem. Just overall, the Browns, I just don't like a lot of what they did. I like their coach. I liked their GM before he did the Watson stuff. I thought he was doing a good job up until that point, but I don't know. Personnel wise, like you said, they got talent, but they also have a lack of depth. So it'll be interesting to see where they go. I mean, looking at their schedule, it's very similar to the Steelers because same division, same teams that they play. But they're visiting Carolina for the rematch, or not the rematch, the matchup against Baker in Week 1, and that's going to be without Watson. So I mean, Baker might get some revenge there.
for
Then they got
sure.
the Jets Week 2. I mean, no Zach Wilson there, so maybe they'll win that one. But then the Steelers visiting Atlanta, home for the Chargers, home for the Pats, in Baltimore, home for the Bengals. They also have a Week 9 bye like the Steelers. Week 10, they're on the road for the Dolphins. Then they're visiting the Bills, home for Tampa, in Houston, in Cincy, home for the Ravens, home for the Saints, in Washington, and in Pittsburgh to wrap up the season. Just like the Steelers, that's a hard schedule because it's very similar teams. But like we said, I think we think this team's less talented than the Steelers, so it could be even more trouble.
Yeah, no, I think especially like this back half of the season is really
Yeah.
tough.
Coming off the bye, look at those
Yeah,
three teams.
it's kind of insane. Like the Chargers and Pats, like those are two tough, like, and the Ravens as well. Like those are tough games in like that first half. But
Yeah.
then like the rest of it's like Bengals, Dolphins, Bills, Bucks. Like the Bengals twice, the Ravens again. Like
Yeah.
the Saints, maybe depending on like how things work out for them. Like
I would say yes. I'm high on the Saints this year.
it's like they're kind of like sandwiched in between like the first few games and the last few games of the season are pretty easy or
Yeah.
like could be easy.
Well, I think they caught some bad luck here because Watson, and this is assuming Watson's only suspended 6 games, not the whole season. If it's the whole season, they're really screwed.
Yeah.
But like their first 6 games: Panthers, Jets, Steelers, Falcons, Chargers, and Patriots. Like we already talked about the Patriots, we don't think they're that great. And then the Jets without Wilson, possibly Panthers, Falcons, but that's gonna be without Watson. So like those are easy games, but they're not gonna have their quarterback.
Yeah, no, it's weird. It's definitely like honestly, like, even the Texans, I think the Texans could totally beat the Browns. I'm not even gonna lie. The reason I say that though is not necessarily because like the Texans are necessarily like the better team. Last season, like they beat like the Chargers when they had no business doing that.
Right, right.
Like I could totally see it
And this
being
is the type of team that could blow a game like
yeah.
that. I agree.
Like
That makes sense.
he hasn't had a full season to play. Like, and then you have to go back to Texas, where like all
They're
of
gonna
this
boo
started.
you
Like
so much.
you're villain number one to Texans fans. You
Yeah.
know,
I want to agree with you. I do, but I
demoralize it.
don't agree. Like I don't think the Texans can stack up to the Browns, even with
No, but I would like to see it happen.
I would too. I think I would like to see Watson play terrible and not win any games, but I don't know if the talent he has is gonna prove that will be proved to be the case.
No, for sure. I guess like for me, I'm just trying to find like that kind of like surprise game.
Right.
Like,
Right.
oh, which is the game you didn't think was gonna go that way? And honestly, it
Right.
could be the Texans. There's
That
just
makes
so
sense.
much going into that game.
Right, and Texans are home. Yeah, okay. I could see it. I could see it. I would say if I had to predict, I would give them 6-11 with Watson, but
Yeah.
without him, like I wouldn't even be surprised if it's 2 or 3 with this schedule. Like the
Yeah.
schedule, the schedule is a big part.
I was gonna say 2-15. I was gonna be like,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. I mean,
Oh
and
boy.
I want to see Jacoby do well. So like, but I don't know. Even if he has an okay season, I still don't know if he could win
Yeah.
more than 2 or 3 games.
No, I agree. I don't think it's good. Like, even if he has an okay season, it's not good enough.
Yeah, I agree. Like you can't just run the ball like over and over. And we've seen Nick Chubb last year. He's not injury prone, but he did have a small injury, and that caused him to miss time. Kareem Hunt missed time last year too. So I don't know. I'm just sad for the Browns fans. Like they deserve so much better than this after that 2020 season. But
I just have this really sick feeling that they're gonna run Nick Chubb into the ground and it's gonna end
yeah,
badly.
yeah. If
Which is
Kareem
a
Hunt,
shame
like if
because
Kareem Hunt holds out, yeah,
it's a shame because I am a big Nick Chubb fan. Like, I mean, I had him on my fantasy
I
team
did
last
too.
year. Like
I
he
did too.
popped off.
Yeah.
Like I really like the guy, and I have a feeling they're gonna run him into the ground because he's like that only like outside of like Njoku and Amari Cooper, the only salvageable part about that offensive like
Right.
skill position. And
Hmm.
it's just I don't know. It's not looking great for them. And I feel bad for Browns fans. He finally had that year of hope and once
Yeah.
again throw it all away. So
Yeah. I mean, with Watson, do you think 6-11 is accurate? Where do you even go lower?
I would say 6-11 sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really know what to say. It's just it's a bummer. Like this has definitely been the biggest bummer of a team we've previewed so far. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope it goes well for them. But
Yeah, no, like when you're talking like poverty franchises in the
yeah,
NFL, Browns is number one.
I totally agree.
What is it about the Browns that like
I don't know, man. Ever since they came back after they moved to Baltimore, but then they came back, it's like they're living on borrowed time almost. Like they were already killed, and then they came back from the grave, and it just hasn't gone well at all.
yeah, no, it's like if there's a God, God hates the Browns.
Yeah, it's just funny because like the Ravens are the Browns. The team didn't fold. Like they just became the Ravens, and then 4 years after that, the Ravens won a Super Bowl in 2000, and they've just been one of the most successfully run teams in the league their entire existence. And they're literally just they started with the Browns. Ozzie Newsome, their longtime GM until a couple years ago, he was the Browns guy, Browns tight end legend, and he became a Ravens legend instead as a front office guy once they moved. And just now the Browns 2.0 is just not gone according to plan whatsoever.
It's absurd. I don't understand.
I know.
I I feel for them. I really do. I don't think Browns fans deserve this, but
No, not at all. At least they have the Cavaliers who seem to be up on the upswing. So we'll see.
that they haven't brought back Colin Sexton.
No, not yet. He's still a free agent. We'll have to
They
see.
gotta bring him back. Bring my man back.
We'll have to see. I don't know if they want to pay him coming off the injury, but that's for Trust the Podcast. We can't talk about that right now. But that's gonna wrap up this episode of the Fan Committee. It was a lot of fun talking about the Steelers, and not as much fun talking about the Browns, but we still had to do it. So thank you guys for listening. Make sure to follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And other than that, have a great rest of your day. Thanks for listening.